Um, all right. I want to say a welcome. Thank you for taking some time this evening to help the Minnesota Youth Ski League and thousands of skiers get out on the snow this winter and how to be a better youth ski coach. My name is Amy Chickanowski, and I'm the executive director of the Minnesota Youth Ski League. I've had this position for about 15 years. The ski league itself is about 30 years old. And for the last few years, we've gotten over 3,000 kids out skiing on the snow. And so we're really proud of that growth and the good job that we do creating lifelong skiers and educating new families to become comfortable in the winter and with the sport of cross country skiing. So how tonight will work is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go through a slides presentation, and I will expound with a verbal commentary on top of the slides presentation. And then that will take about 30-35 minutes. And at the end of that, we will have a question and answer time where you can unmute or use the chat to ask questions, and I will read through the questions and do answers at the end of the session. And again, I will be posting this presentation on the MYSL.org website. And I will mention now and probably at the end of the presentation, we have also been doing welcome presentations for all of the different skill levels. And there are short slides presentations that are already linked online under the latest news on our website. So depending on which level you're coaching or which level your child is in, you can get a few pointers for how to coach and how to support a child in that skill level. So I'm going to share my screen and get the slides presentation up here. There we go. Okay. So you guys should be seeing the slides presentation now. Can I get some thumbs up to verify that that is true? Okay, here we go. How to coach, how to be a successful youth ski coach using a games-based approach. This is primarily for our Ski Sparks programming, which is our Ski for Fun program. But we also, all of these concepts are also true for our Ski Works programming, which is our Ski for Sport program for children 9 to 14 years old. So thank you for being part of our community. Our vision is to, we envision a world passionate about access to outdoor recreation, winter, and lifelong health for all. And our mission is to empower youth to be joyful, confident winter enthusiasts by building inclusive communities that reduce barriers to cross-country skiing. And we do that through our values of lifelong health, accessibility, connections, fun, and transformation. So to review the skill levels in our Ski Sparks programming, we have 6 skill levels. The first 4 are for classic skiing. We formalized an older beginner group this year, which we've been using kind of informally for a long time, which is an older beginner group that we're calling 3 stars. So if a child is 11 to 14 and they're a beginner to skiing, we're gonna write a special curriculum for that group this year. And we also did some tweaks to the level 1 curriculum where we lowered the age a little bit, so it's just 4 and 5-year-olds, and no poles for the entire curriculum, for the entire first season, or until a child is 6. They don't need poles at all. It just complicates things. We do want all children, actually all skiers, to learn classic skiing before they skate. It is possible if you're skiing multiple times a week, like in a middle school or a high school program or in our Ski Works program, to learn classic and skate at the same time. But if in our ski sparks where you're only getting out once a week, we really want the fundamentals of the classic skiing to be very strong before a skier moves on to skating. Our program design is uh, based on the long-term development model that was created by the Canadian government. And it's a fantastic model, tons of research and methods to follow to create age-appropriate activities. It focuses on skill development windows and how to create lifelong skiers. So it's actually a public health initiative. It also will be a pathway to elite development, but its most important function is creating those lifelong skiers. So how do we do that, creating those lifelong skiers? It sounds simple, but it's not as easy as you might think. You need the right exposure at the right time, and the engagement of the families and the community are critical. So there's a link here to an article I wrote about what MYSL believes is the best way to create lifelong skiers. And if you are interested in learning more about the Canadian LTD model, please email me at any time. And we've purchased a bunch of free codes to take the Canadian Sport for Life online course, which they just kind of redid and revamped, I think last year or the year before. So it's quite good. And then if you want to see the Canadian manual that's specific to cross-country skiing, there's a link to the PDF, which follows the LTD guidelines, but it's specific to cross-country skiing. And it's really, I would say it's fun to skim for most people. I don't know if I would want to read it word for word, but it's a very helpful document if you're at all interested in child development. So the legal requirements for coaches, and this is not actually specific to MYSL, this is a legal requirement for all coaches working with youth, is you do have to have some sort of registration, so we have a record of you. So MYSL, we started volunteer registration officially online last year. This is the second year that we're doing it. We collect a little bit of information so we can do background checks, and then we also have you sign waivers. The second step is the Safe Sport training, and we have our own Safe Sport in-house training called the Abuse Prevention and Athlete Wellbeing Training. And if you were a coach last year and you did our online training, then this year you just need to do a shorter refresher course. And then thirdly, it's any on-snow coach, so a coach or assistant coach has to do a heads-up concussion course. That's a CDC online course, and that's actually, I think that one is a state law, I believe. But that is linked as part of the volunteer form, and also I just added it yesterday to our homepage for our volunteer registration, so you can find the link directly there as well. And again, that's just every 3 years you take the course, and then you email us a certificate when you've completed the course. So on snow safety for a ski coach, one of the very interesting things about skiing is we have to deal with a lot of weather. And so you want to be more aware if you're leading a group and yourself at skiing of the weather in the wintertime, and specifically the wind direction and how that relates to where you're going to be skiing and where your lesson area is, and where you can quickly get to be protected by the wind. So those are all really good things for a coach to know. So spend some time getting to know the layout of your ski area, and if you have an open lesson area, what direction of wind causes the most problem, and then get used to a weather app or using the NOAA site to figure out how to read that, so you know what the wind chills are and which wind direction is most problematic for you. And then what you're looking out for is cold skiers, but specifically frostbite. So if you see any white skin, that skin needs to be covered up as quickly as possible and the skier warmed up. Some other safety factors are we need to keep the group together. And all groups should have assigned sweepers. And what a sweeper is somebody that brings up the rear and is always the last person in the group. So if you're heading out on the trail, they serve a couple of important functions. They can stay with stragglers. If you're on a crowded snowmaking loop, they're kind of the caboose, so the smaller children don't get run over by passing faster moving skiers. And if there's a child that has an equipment problem or some other problem and they need to find a parent, you have an extra person there that can assist that child rather than the coach or assistant coach being pulled away from the group. So the sweeper is actually a pretty important role. Equipment, a couple of things for coaches to know. In level 1, a child will never be able to put the skis on by themselves. And in level 2, really only the older kids will be able to put their equipment on completely by themselves. So a coach will always have to be on the lookout and helping with that. And even if somebody does know how to put equipment on, there are times when a binding can ice up or something can go a little wrong. And so just be prepared to get down on the ground and help out with that. We did have some people yesterday say that they bring a paint can opener tool with them. That's very effective for getting ice and snow out of boots. The other thing we'll talk about a little later too is the pull straps. So if a child has straps that have never been adjusted and they're twice as big as they should be, it's really worth it to take the time to adjust those, because it's going to make any technique more difficult, but it's also a bit of a safety hazard, because if they trip or fall, the pole will get very tangled if the strap isn't holding their hand kind of snugly to the pole. So please pay attention to the pole straps as well. And then finally, trail etiquette. So as a large group and getting group permits at all of our facilities, we have to be very careful about how we're behaving on the trails. The two most important things, I would say, is never skiing backwards. So always skiing in the proper direction, even if it's just for a few feet. Please really try to avoid skiing backwards on a trail. And the other is walking on a trail. So be very aware, even if you're a parent of a level 1 skier, you're not required to be on skis, but you need to be very careful where you walk, and you want to walk off to the side of the trail, never on the groomed part of the trail, and certainly never in the track. So hopefully we all know to never step in a ski track. And a few pointers on group dynamics. So we want to make sure you're having some eye contact. We want you to be in the middle of a line or an arc when you talk to the group. And you should only talk to the group when you're facing them. So if you're demonstrating technique, you don't want to ski away from the group as you're talking to them. So just always make sure you're looking at the group when you're speaking. Pay a little bit of attention to the sun. So if the sun is in your skier's eyes, they can't see what you're doing. So you can arrange the group. If it's a sunny day and you're trying to do some demonstrations, just arrange the group so the sun is at their back. If you are lucky enough to have junior coaches, which are high school volunteers, it's a great idea to use them for technique demonstration. We certainly don't require that every coach be able to do all the demonstrations themselves or all the technical aspects of skiing themselves, but you should be able to explain it and use other people to show the technique. Make sure the group can hear you. So you have to speak loudly. Talking softly or conversation style isn't going to work with a group of kids outside. So please project. And take the time to ask the skiers' names. You're not required to remember, even though most of them will have name tags. But it creates a bond and a sense of trust with the child if they have a little bit of dialogue with you and you don't look like the big scary coach. So take some time to ask a name, ask a question, what's your favorite ice cream, that sort of thing, and that can go a long way in making the child feel comfortable. And then take any opportunities you have throughout the session just to chat with the skier and make a connection, check in with them, It can be about skiing. It cannot be about, it can be about anything. If they have a dog, whatever you want to talk about, so the child feels like they have a relationship to the group. How a child learns. So our level ones and some of our younger level twos will fall in this 6 and under age group. And they really need a single and simple focus. Their activities will be individually engaging. So you're not going to be able to have big organized games with level 1 skiers. And they want brief, large muscle movements. And then most importantly, they learn by watching and doing. So really the less words, the better. And they just want to follow and do what they see the lead coach or the assistant coach doing. This picture, the skiers are doing remarkably well with their arm swing and their coordination. And you can also see some supporting parents there on foot, and that's totally fine. Level 1 skiers often don't use the quote trail. They'll be off to the side or in a lesson area. They don't ski a distance. So they really just need a packed down section of snow for most of their learning. Ages 7 to 12, they need clear boundaries and well-defined focus. They want supportive and inclusive group activities, and they learn through experience and interaction, and their worth is tied to accomplishment. And that last point is pretty important. So sometimes if a skier is not getting a skill or they're not able to do something that they see their peers doing, they can take that pretty hard, and they think that they're a bad person because they can't pick up that skill. So please be sure to reassure that skier, change it up a little bit, give them an extra pointer, but most of all, encourage them that, they can do it. They just can practice a little more. You can give them something else to work on. But it does not mean that anything is wrong with their self-worth. The older kids, we don't have a lot of these in Ski Sparks, but they definitely are trying to reach individual goals through group activities. They appreciate being treated as young adults. However, their abilities may regress due to growth spurts. So what we're really trying to do in MYSL is give kids a strong foundation and skills development window before their growth spurt. So really that's one of the key takeaways here is skill development before your growth spurt. Once a child is in their growth spurt, they become clumsy, their muscles get tight, they can lose strength. It's a very difficult time to work on skills. And so we want to get that skill acquisition in before the growth spurt, and then basically support the child through the growth spurt until they get to the other side of it. Attending to a child's needs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the reason I thought it was important to put in here is because we're outside. There's a lot of weather to deal with. There's this slippery and inconsistent snow, so it's never the same 2 days in a row. And that can be a lot for us to deal with and a lot for the child to deal with. And so we're going to have a hard time teaching anything to the child, or the child doing the best that they can if they're cold, if they're hungry, if they're nervous about the safety of the group, if there's a stranger trying to teach them these skills and they don't have any connection to that person. So this is just a call to pay attention to those things in your group. So if you see a child that their hat fell off, or that they're shivering, or that their boot is untied, you're going to have to address those basic needs before we move on to any sort of ski skills. A few do's and don'ts. Do make adjustments to your plan during a session based on snow conditions, weather, and the children's interests. So it is true that MYSL has a day-by-day curriculum for 8 weeks for all of our skill levels, but it's not meant to be written in stone. It depends on, just as we say here, the conditions, the weather, the interests, but also the terrain that you have available to you. and the general skill level of your group. And so you do have to be flexible. Do give encouraging words from start to finish. So always try to use do phrases. So even if you really want the skier not to do something, you have to think of a way to say it in a positive way. So instead of don't turn right, you have to tell them to turn left. Don't talk too much. So talking a lot and analyzing technique and using a lot of technique verbiage kind of works for adults and maybe some juniors, but it doesn't work for children. Okay, so just keep it brief, keep it simple, learn by doing. Don't be sarcastic, doesn't work with children. And don't let the skiers get cold. So when you see people getting cold, it's time to do a dance, it's time to do some star turns, it's time to go ski a little loop. It's time to do something to get moving and warm up. And finally, don't force an unwilling child to participate. This is a really good use of your sweeper, or if you have a junior coach, to spend some time with that child to see what their issues are to help them feel more comfortable. But if a child really doesn't want to do a specific activity or a game, then you can let them sit out. You still have to keep an eye on them and they still have to stay with your group, but they don't have to participate if they're having a bad day or very unwilling. So finally, to some cross-country skiing advice. The essential skills, and I really put some thought into this, really tried to narrow it down. And again, we do have level presentations that are posted online that will give you really the specific skills that we're working on for each level. But here they are. Number one, getting up and falling down. There is a video posted on the top of our Facebook page. That's a very good example of how a young skier should get up. And it's also in the level presentations. I'm not going to go through and watch that video right now, but we basically use a dead bug technique where you lie on your back, put your skis up in the air to untangle them, and then you put them to the side. And then most importantly, when you get up, your hands go forward towards your tips. They do not go behind you because that just creates a little scooter and you start scooting yourself down the trail rather than accomplishing getting up. So take a look at that video. Essential skill number 2 is one-legged glide, balance, and weight transfer, which is really all the same thing. Arm swing, which is much more difficult than you would think, and it's because the poles confuse everybody. So most people have pretty good arm swing without poles, but you put poles in their hand and they lose it. This is true of adults as well as children. And then keeping that rhythm with the poles is tricky as well. And then we have to understand what the edges of our skis do, both for going uphill and for going down. I do want to reflect on the picture on the right here of this young skier. He's probably 9 years old. He, in this picture, has one point of contact. So he has one foot on the ground, the other foot is behind him and in the air, and both poles are off the ground. That is ideal athletic classic technique. So he's in his full glide phase there. So most of us don't ever picture this phase of striding when we think about striding technique. This is where we want the kids to get with their comfort level and their mastery of classic technique. And this is where it starts. So arm swing leads to rhythm. Now the child on the left is probably 5 years old, no poles, but working on exaggerated arm swing because the arm swing gives you momentum, gives you balance, gives you the rhythm. And so we practice the arm swing. So I'll emphasize this in the next few slides, but every session should involve some activity or game without poles, because when you don't have the poles in your hand, you're working on your balance, you're working on effective kick, you're working on the arm swing, you're working on a lot of these important things. But once the arm swing is down, you can gradually add the poles. And then I don't think I addressed this later. I'll do it when we I have some bad technique examples, and we'll talk about something with the poling. My pro tip here, though, is arm swing with no poles is a great way to warm the hands. So if you have a child that always has cold hands, have them ski the first 5 or 10 minutes of the session with no poles at all, and their hands will warm right up because they have that exaggerated arm swing. So the edges going uphill. My key piece of advice here is be creative with the terrain. So if you need, if you're trying to work on the skills of uphill, whether it's sidestep or herringbone, the hill does not have to be on trail. It can be a side hill up to a fence. If you're on a golf course, basically any hill with a couple inches of snow over grass will work for practice. So don't think that you have to be, on a groomed trail to practice a lot of these skills. So be creative with the places that you find to practice. And downhill control. So here's a great example of a hill that's a decent hill, not huge, but the skier is going through a slalom course and catching a Nerf football at the same time. So really working on those skills and comfort, understanding the edges. And again, it's not about bombing down the hill. It's about having control, being able to steer, being able to stop. And another note about hills, kids think hills are a blast, especially downs more than ups. And they are lighter, if they're on fish scale skis, they have pretty slow skis. And so they don't have the same momentum that an adult does, and they're not afraid of falling. So I'm saying all this because oftentimes the adults or the coaches will have more fear of the downhills than the children do. And you want to try not to project your fear onto the kids. And if you don't have hilly terrain at your trail system, you can be creative with, like I mentioned earlier, a non-trail hill, or if you take a small bump, you can make it more challenging by doing one-legged drills or slalom, whatever it is, to really work on skills with those skiers. Skating. I threw these couple of pictures in here just to show you some really good pictures of some young kids with great skate technique. As most of you might know, it is not easy to find attractive pictures of people skate skiing. So, but these kids look great. So the picture on the left, shoulders square to the ski. In both pictures, they're riding a bent leg, full extension on the kick. Good control with the arms, so the arms aren't flailing. Great examples. So that's a very young skier on the left. She's probably 8 or 9 in that picture, and I think the skier on the right is maybe 12 or 13. This picture indicates that they have more of a handle on technique than most of the skiing population of Minnesota right now. This is very, very good technique. It does not mean they're fast. It means they have very good skill acquisition. It means they've played a lot and been on skis a lot during their lives. Not training, just messing around and picking up skills. So how do we do that? How do we get kids to look like that? We allow them to do any kind of movement on skis, and it does not have to look like skiing. So I don't know what the kids are doing in this picture, but it doesn't look like skiing. But if you can, do the splits and do that kind of stretching on skis, you have a pretty good feel of what's going on with your skis. So the movement can be multi-directional. It can be about rhythm. It can be dynamic. It can be jumping, hopping. You can work on that rhythm for short distances, and gradually the distances will get longer for the child. But the whole point here is any movement on skis is helpful, and don't get stuck in the mindset that it always has to look like skiing. So again, drop the poles every day. Every session should involve activity without poles. Works on balance, proper leg use, edging, weight transfer, really, really good skills. And that's really where the games come in and why the games are so important. Games naturally teach, again, the edges, starting, stopping skills, weight transfer, body position. So in a game where you have to start and stop a lot, The only way to get going from a stop is to lower your center of gravity. So get in that athletic position, have a bent leg, and do a really good kick for the first couple of steps. It's a super important skill. It's very difficult to teach, especially to juniors and adults. But it's very easy to teach if you play a lot of games, and the kids don't even know that they're learning it. And here are just some more examples. So if you can manage to build a snowman with your skis on, you will be a better skier at the end of it. Sharks and minnows, tags, and anything you can do in gym class, you can do on skis. Be creative with relays, any short little relays. We do a fun relay with the Ski Works kids that's called an equipment relay, where every time you go out and back and ski around a cone, you have to take off a ski or a pole until by the end you're just running to the cone and back. And the kids think that's a blast. Human slalom is also a fun one, where the skiers themselves are the slalom poles, and then you create this continuous loop of the back person going through the slalom and then stopping, and then the next back person goes through the slalom and stops. All super fun, and the kids learn a lot by doing those things. Here's an example of an obstacle course, which I'm not going to dwell on because I'm not suggesting that everyone tote cones around all the time, but if it's possible, a few cones go a long way. And they don't always have to be cones. They can be something that's easier to carry, like Beanie Babies or something like that the skiers have to ski around, or they have to ski by and pick up without stopping, or they have to pick it up as they are wedge turning down a hill, all sorts of things. Scooters. Scooters is anytime there's one ski on and one ski off, and it's really the bread and butter of many of our Ski Sparks activities and games. It teaches good kicking technique and full weight transfer. So obviously you're not going to be able to glide on the ski you have on unless you have the other foot off the ground. And that is what classic technique should look like. And also the kick that you do with the non-ski foot is exactly the kick motion that we want you to have with the ski on. So it's very much down into the snow and not out behind you, which is a common mistake that people make with skis on. So it really, really teaches proper technique, and it builds confidence because it's a relatively easy thing for the kids to do right off the bat. And again, just to emphasize, learning through play is really important and really the way to go here. So we know who the skier on the left is. That's our own MYSL alumni and gold medalist, Jesse Diggins, looking a lot like the young boy on the right. So, I think if I wouldn't have had this picture of the boy on the right, you would look at this picture of Jesse and you're like, wow, that is like really something. Like, look at that athleticism. How many years of training did it take, to develop that sort of athleticism? Well, what it takes is play, equipment that fits well, safe snow, and the opportunity to have the space and time to mess around on your skis, and the skills come forth. So some common problems and corrections. Your job as a coach is mostly to observe and say as little as possible until you see a real problem. And so I tried to identify the four biggest problems that I know of, and then I'm going to add one more that I thought of yesterday. So the first one is shuffling. So the skier is unable to balance on one ski, meaning that both feet are always firmly on the ground. The correction for that is scooters, because you can't have both feet on the ground and move with the scooters. So again, reinforcing the technique. The second point is slipping skis. So they're just not getting any kick. They can't figure out how to compress that kick zone. The correction for that is scooters, or if you ask the child to trot or run on the skis and then gradually lengthen to a stride, because the running or trotting will help them compress that kick zone. And this is an interesting one because a lot of you might experience this and you don't quite know what's going on, but when you hear your skis slapping, and what that is your back foot is coming down too soon because you're losing your balance a little bit. And what you can do to correct that is, again, scooters, because it's a balance problem. And so we need to kind of fundamentally go back and work on the balance and weight transfer, um, so you're not losing your balance and letting that ski slap to the ground a little bit. And the fourth point, poor rhythm. So the arms and legs are not alternating. If it's a full-on right arm, right leg together, we like to call that a Frankenstein. You correct that by taking the poles off and working on that arm swing. And then you can gradually add the poles back after you do a bunch of stuff without the poles. And how we like to add the poles, and this is the thing I wanted to add, is you give the poles back to the child. You have the loops of the poles around their wrists, but don't have them grab onto the poles. And so they can still swing their arm in that natural motion that you just worked on. And then very gradually, they grab their pole and drag the poles behind them. Drag, 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 and gradually stick them in the ground. So they're getting a sense of where to put that basket in. And what that prevents is, this is a common thing you'll see, is that a young skier wants to pick the pole up and actually stick it a couple of feet in front of their foot. And we don't ever really want the basket to be in front of the toes. So the basket of the pole should always go in by the poles. So we want the rhythm, we want the arm swing, and then that gradual technique of adding the poles is pretty effective for getting rid of that forward arm swing. But the other thing is doing sprints and relays, and anything that requires a little bit of a burst of speed, because a child can't do a burst of speed while sticking the pole 2 feet in front of them, and because you're actually pushing backward on the pole. You're killing your momentum when you do that. So if you ask the child to do something fast, like race to a tree that's 20 yards away, they'll figure that out on their own. Okay. Common problems and corrections for skating. So slipping. So the skier is really not understanding how to get kick. They're not getting using the edge of the ski. So again, take the poles away. And a good drill is to start with the skis in a V and fall forward so they understand that the momentum is coming from their weight. And once they have any sense of using the edge of the ski, then you can move to doing snakes or S's or figure eights, because if they're forced to try to steer, they will more rapidly understand the edge concept that they also need for the kick in skating. Polling is awkward. Timing is not right. The correction for that is it's a balance problem. We need to reinforce the balance. So take the poles away, play more games. But again, very common answers here. It usually involves taking the poles away, and true for you as well. All adults and coaches, you will be better skiers if you do a significant amount of skiing without your poles. The third point here, over rotation of torso. So what I'm talking about is when the shoulders rotate past 90 degrees for your gliding ski. And what that does is it kills all the momentum, because it actually creates some torque on that ski. And what you want to emphasize there is, again, sprinting, short poling motions. And the one verbal cue I'm suggesting here is that you want their hands to stop at the hips. So you don't ever want the hands drifting behind the hips, because that sets you up for that rotation. Very true on downhills as well. So your controlled, safe place for downhills is to have your hands in front of you. It's actually quite dangerous to let the hands drift behind you, because it does cause that rotation, and you'll lose control on downhills. So hands always in front. And we do talk about that a lot in the MYSL curriculum. I don't have it on here though. And then finally, legs too straight or kick is not effective. And again, the correction is sprints, relays, games. The kids will naturally figure out acceleration. by dropping their weight and bending their legs. Um, so it's not something you need to verbally explain. You just need to set up a drill or a game that will help them figure that out on their own. So a sample lesson plan, we're actually going to be kind of refreshing the curriculum this year and simplifying it a little bit, but this is my suggestion. So you will want to look at the lesson plan ahead of time because the lesson plan will have some goals. You don't need to memorize it, but you want to have some idea of what you're trying to do that day. Sometimes you might want to prepare some optional props, like a backpack with a dozen Beanie Babies in it. So you'll start out with a group gathering and some sort of opening game or activity where you can keep the kids close to you, but you're waiting for a few latecomers. You probably will want to do a short ski or some sort of activity to warm up. And again, your level 1 skiers aren't going anywhere on the trail usually, but level 2 and higher can do a little loop to warm up. You'll do a core activity from the lesson list, and you can pick 3 or 4 of those. And then we have a games list, and you can pick a couple of selections from the games list. And then either before or after the games, and depending on your trail conditions, you can go on a little adventure ski or loop out on the trail, which the kids find really exciting because to a lot of them, it's very new to ski out on the trails. And then finally, at the end, you have a group gathering where the skiers and the caregivers reunite. This year, we're not having a group snack. So usually this is treated differently in different clubs. So sometimes it's at the end and sometimes it's at different times throughout the session time where different levels go in for their snack. But this year, it's going to be the family responsibility to bring their own snack, and we cannot have those. We can't gather and have the snacks as a group. So, and just quickly, special considerations for special skiers. I put these in just so people are aware that there isn't a lot that has to be done for disabled skiers. So when I say what I'm talking about are limb deficient, so if a child has an artificial leg, especially, the most important thing is we want them not to have to rent equipment every week. We want them to have a better equipment situation. So please contact me or the club leader to make sure that they have equipment that they can make modifications to. They also might have 1 or 0 functioning arms, and it hardly matters. Most of the curriculum will work for 1 pole or no poles. Sit skiers, there's plenty of sit ski equipment in the community, so it's just a matter of matching that up with skiers, and we have resources to help us do that. And sight impaired, some kids can function fine with very little difference, especially out during the bright daylight, and some kids will need a guide. And then the fourth one I thought of is some kids don't like the overstimulus of the crowds. And so this is something just to be sensitive to. It's a good thing for your sweeper or a junior coach to deal with. And it's mostly a problem in the on the man-made snow loops, where it can be very crowded and people of very different sizes and going very different speeds. That can be, in all honesty, a lot for a lot of us to deal with. So just be aware of how your skiers are handling that. And in conclusion, the primary coach skills that we need for our Ski Sparks programming are enthusiasm, a little bit of a handle on group dynamics, understanding of the fundamental skills, and an understanding of how games can accomplish the development of those skills. The secondary coach skills we need are your own personal ski skills or your personal ski technique. My point here is that we don't need everybody to be a great skier. We need the enthusiasm and the understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. But you don't have to be a star skier to be a star coach. And that is it. I'm going to stop sharing. I think you can see me now. And so now I would like to just open up the chat, and if people have questions, they can type them into the chat screen, and I will read those and answer them. Are we wearing masks? Most likely. So we will probably be redoing our policies and procedures, but we're leaning towards everybody wearing masks for the entire club meeting time. Where can we get a copy of the lesson plans? Right now, it's a kind of a copyright lockdown, and I haven't quite decided how we're going to do that. But the traditional route is through your club leader. But I'm working on getting them formatted so they work a little better on a phone. So we'll have to stay posted on the curriculum distribution. And someone states buffs work as masks very well, and that is true. So a traditional ski muff is considered a face covering, and that there's nothing wrong with that. And I actually just ordered 5,000 of them. So all skiers are going to get a muff right away in January this year, and I think we'll have enough for the volunteers as well. Do you have favorite YouTube videos or trainers you like to watch for the game ideas? So in part of our efforts to make this a virtual year a success, because we are certainly going to start, if not a couple weeks late, we're looking at the end of January for most of our clubs. We have a bunch of high schoolers doing their high school projects that include sample games for every week for every skill level for the whole year. So every week we're going to have 60 to 90-second videos by skill level showing one game and one skill to work on. And we'll start posting those and sending links probably the first week of January. There aren't a lot of other videos out there, which is why we're kind of doing it ourselves. At the end of the presentation, I do actually link to Cross Country Ski Academy for adult technique and ideas. So if you're kind of ready to take on more about how you think about your own technique, take a look at xcacademy.org. The link, again, will be at the end of the slides presentation. When do we expect to see final COVID protocols? We're just drafting those now. So, I mean, final is in quotes, and yeah, that's about right. So we will get something out in the next few days, but then we'll have to, I mean, I'd be surprised if we don't have to redraft them again. Question, for new coaches, will there be a chance to meet with other coaches, hopefully experienced ones, prior to the first lesson? At this point, it's club by club, and we do suggest to the leaders that they have pulled together a virtual meeting for their, especially their coaches. I want to make sure everyone realizes we also have in-person trainings scheduled, and there's still spots available, I think both for the December 30th and January 10th sessions in the metro area, and you can sign up with those. And that's a really good chance to at least lay eyes on other people that are trying to do the same thing as you are. I think it can be intimidating when you go out, you know, right now on the snowmaking loop at Worth, if you go out there, even someone like me, I'm having people burn by me the whole time. Everyone's in Lycra and they're passing me. And I know that can be really kind of intimidating, but don't let that intimidate you. You know, in Scandinavian countries where people ski from a young age, there are people of every speed that are skiing all the time, and they all have perfect technique. And it's really only, you know, the training athletes that are the crazy ones doing laps and going fast. Everyone else is just out there enjoying themselves. So That's the goal for you guys. You know, we want that technique because it will make you happier to be more efficient. Was curriculum updated for all levels? So yes, I'm going to clean it up for all levels. It's not done yet though, but I'll have it done probably by the first week of January. And in the meantime, it's the old curriculum is what's available. So that's a little confusing. I guess my point is I didn't pull down the old curriculum. So the old curriculum is still there. And we'll make an announcement when the update is published. Question, if I'm coaching level 1, how important is it to be on classic skis versus skate skis? If you're coaching level 1, it's not important at all. In fact, it's you hardly need skis at all to be a level 1 coach. I want to emphasize a few things here though. A level 1 skier has to have a caregiver with them this year the entire time. That person does not have to be on skis. It's in case the skier needs assistance, and we don't want the volunteers to have, in a COVID year, to have to pick the skier up or do physical things with the skier, so we want a caregiver there. I've gotten the skate ski question a lot for other levels as well, and I would say that you can coach level 2 and level 3 on skate skis as well, faking the technique. By the time you get to level 4, it's going to be a little harder to fake it. But I would say level 1 through 3, you can manage on skate skis. Question, how to deal with helicopter parents, especially, well, I think the question got cut off. But my suggestion this year for helicopter parents is to make sure that that helicopter parent is coaching another group. So in general, there are a couple of dynamics going on here that parents and coaches need to figure out. Sometimes your own child is going to do better if they're in your group, and sometimes they're going to do better if they're anywhere but your group. Okay, so you have to figure out how that works for you and your skier. We can't really generalize about it. It depends on the kid. But I think what the coach might be asking here is, it seems like the parent is actually holding the child back. So it looks like the child doesn't want the parent there. And I would try to distract that parent with a task or helping another child or doing anything but, paying attention to their own child. Question, any ideas when we might start meeting as a group in person? Right now we're saying the end of January or the first week of February. So that's what we've been saying. We have not digested the governor's change. And in fact, I tried to look up what they're doing with the school stuff, and it's very confusing. So I have, we'll have to keep you posted on what we take away from all of that. Oh, there's the rest of that. Yes, the skier doesn't want the helicopter parent there. Yes, distract the parent if you can. Will there be a change to the start date to coincide with the new guideline of youth sports starting back up on January 4th? We will likely not start right away, but again, the board is meeting and we will talk about what we're going to try to align with. We can potentially align with the youth start date. We could also potentially align with the grade school in-person date, which is the 18th. But I'll tell you, these are the factors that are going into that decision. So it's the COVID numbers. It's the fact that there were parameters and now there are no parameters. The high school league isn't helping anything because they keep changing their minds, and that's been very difficult to do. But then we are also getting permits revoked, so we have to renegotiate all the permits. We are short on volunteers. So in this COVID year, when our groups have to be smaller, we needed to start kind of satellite clubs and smaller groups, and we have not been able to recruit enough coaches. So this is just a short call to you guys. If you're here tonight, you're probably signed up as a coach, but if there's a skiing spouse, a skiing grandparent, neighbors, we need many more volunteers to for most of our clubs to be able to open up. We're quite short on volunteers. And then lastly, our clubs are all run by volunteers. And so we really can only do what a volunteer is comfortable with. And we're giving them loads of guidance. But at the end of the day, we can't force a volunteer to do something that they're not comfortable with. Okay. Do coaches need to have their own equipment or can it be rented? For the most part, coaches have to have their own equipment. We are still assessing if we have any equipment left, and potentially that could go to parents. But and I'm talking about club equipment, but that tops out at a 42 boot, which is, what is that? I think that's an 8 men's. But please understand what's going on at your facility. So many facilities rent adult skis, including Hiawatha. We get a lot of questions about Hiawatha, but many other facilities, Three Rivers Parks, and will have skis available to rent for adults. So even if your child is getting equipment through a club equipment bank, there's still a good chance that you're skiing at a facility that will have adult rentals. So check your club pages. So MYSL.org, each club has their own page with that sort of information. And if you have any questions, you can talk to your club leader and you can find the contact on your club pages. What if our location has no snow and not a snow with, yes. So this year, because of COVID, we do not have any backup permits. And so we will do alternative activities. So it's suggested that we still meet and do things outside, but it might not be on snow. But I also want to point out, as an adult, you might have an image of there needing to be, 6 or 8 inches of snow and beautiful groomed trails for it to be fun skiing. I mean, let me tell you, if there's any whiteness or even frost on the ground and you have grass, a kid thinks that's a blast. And so you really can't go into it thinking that we need tons of snow for this to be fun for kids. They really just need something to be slippery, and it can be, and as long as it's safe, as long as you know where the pavement is, it can be a blast for kids. And in some of the level presentations, I actually showed some pictures that weren't very, quote, pretty, to show you that the kids are having a blast on, white colored grass, basically. How's availability of youth equipment now? If you're talking about MYSL, I don't know yet. I'm still getting orders actually directly from Norway at this point, but I will say that the whole industry is sold out globally. So there is no more ski equipment in the pipeline. So it's basically, if it's shipped, it might get here depending on if FedEx has any capacity to do that in between their vaccination deliveries. Because let me tell you, it's taken a long time for FedEx as well right now.
Amy, Andy just said Hoygaard's has nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, most shops don't have anything. Though here's a hot tip for any parents still looking. I did talk to Finsisu maybe 4 days ago, and they still had most sizes. Not a lot, but a couple of every size for the smallest, to about a 12, 13-year-old skier. Question, for level 1, does child need an additional caregiver present if I'm volunteering as sweeper? No, they don't. So if you're the sweeper, that is good enough, and thank you very much. And I forgot to mention, for the level 1 parents, you do have to register as a volunteer. So even if you're only there to attend to your child, we do need you to register at the Get Involved link at MYSL.org. Question, what is the best way to show or explain how to diagonal stride, kick and gliding for those that are just learning? Scooter drills. It's really the best way. And then we do, again, this trotting into gliding, playing the games. But the curriculum can really will really help you with some ideas, games, and activities around that. The real key here is, again, getting the kid in the skill development window. So once a kid is, 13, 14 or older, it gets much more difficult to teach that person skiing because they've already developed fear of falling. The balance isn't as good. So again, the key here is get the kids young and let them learn through the games. Someone stated that Joe's on the east side of the metro sounds like they might still have a few skis, so that's great. Yeah, and someone said the shuffle, shuffle, glide. Yes, thank you, Nicholas, our St. Cloud leader. That's how you are going to teach a young child the classic technique. And we do talk a lot about that in the curriculum, the shuffle, shuffle, glide. I think that's it for questions. I apologize if I skipped a few. It's hard to follow when it's moving around. But if I did skip, I guess retype it in if you still have any questions. And otherwise, please email me anytime if you have questions. Recruit your neighbors, and we look forward to seeing you on the trails this winter. Check out those the welcome level sessions. I'm trying to think, and we will, like I said, be getting out the virtual videos from the high school skiers starting in January as well. Question, is there an extension to the deadline for Minneapolis ski discount? I don't know, but I was actually going to go and test it and see if it still worked. So Becky, if you want to try that and let me know. see if that discount still shows up today, and then I'll see what's going on. What group size will be this year? We don't actually know. We're waiting to see if this was our idea. We capped our clubs mostly at 60 to allow smaller groups of approximately 10 per skill level, and then with a coach, assistant coach, and sweeper. We're trying to plan, and this is part of the difficulty of what the high school league is doing and whose advice we're following. We can imagine a scenario where we're told that our groups can only be 5 people. And so it's very difficult for us to plan, and that's where having lots of volunteers really comes into play. So all I can say right now is, the reason we capped at 60 is because we thought that that gave us the most flexibility to break into the smaller groups. The 25 was a number that the DNR, oddly, we fall under DNR guidelines, and 25 was a number we were trying to stick to for subgroups. And not that we would ever have one group that's 25, but even if you had, for example, level 2 and 3 meeting at a certain side of the parking lot, that would be your 25 people, even if it was 2 groups of 10. So anyway, I don't have an answer right now, and even if I did, it would probably change in a few weeks. Can you share right now or follow-up email which clubs, locations, and levels are still in greatest need of coaches? Almost every club right now is in need of coaches. I would say only maybe 20% of our clubs are set, and it's mostly in the higher levels, 4, 5, and 6. So the highest classic level and the skating levels. Code still works, Becky says. So if you have not gotten your Minneapolis All Access Pass, please do that soon. That's where I skied today, and it was in great shape. It's, I don't know what the distance is on it, probably a little more than 1 kilometer, set for classic and skating, not too crowded at about 4:30 in the afternoon, which was surprising, and it's lit. The code is MYSL 21 for an all access Minneapolis code, which will, that code can be used by any of our members, meaning the skiers, for $5 off of their pass. But more importantly, it's a $50 pass, I think, versus $90 usually for an older skier or a coach. You can email me about that later if you have questions. 21, MYSL 21. Okay, I think we're slowing down in the chat. So again, please follow up with me if you have any questions. I'll get this training posted online. I'm sure I'll have some technical difficulties, but I'll get it up there eventually. And so if you recruit more coaches in the future, they can still listen to the training. And that'll give them a huge head start. Another question here, is that discount, the MYSL 21 is a Minneapolis Park Rec ski pass discount, which is good for the all access Worth Loop. We do not have a discount for Three Rivers, but at Three Rivers, children under 12 don't need a pass at all. So it's already a pretty good deal. But the adults, the coaches, definitely still need Three Rivers. I will point out that both a Three Rivers pass, which is good at Elm Creek and Highland, and the Minneapolis pass have a discount for additional household members. So once you buy one pass at full price, everything else is approximately half price after the first pass. You have to buy them all at once, so just make sure you're a little bit organized when you go in to get your passes. Doesn't matter if we have alpine or Nordic skis. You will want Nordic skis for sure. Again, though, private level 1 parents, it'd be fine to be on shoes or in boots, no skis at all. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Do your snow dances, and we will see you out there soon.